Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. Today I will be broadcasting without showing my camera because I realized that the camera resolution was not very good. I'm currently in hiding, so I don't have my usual internet connection. But before I start, I just have to quickly check the audio. I'm not sure if people can hear me, so I'm just going to try the actual live stream. Okay, that seems to work fine. Okay, so I would like to update people on what I've been up to and what I'm doing. I'm extremely delayed with all my projects. I had lots and lots of things that I promised people that I would deliver. These are reports, and I've got a pile of stuff to actually write. Now, the problem is that I'm facing currently is that I'm being neurotecked heavily. So I am really struggling to cope with basically what's being done to me through the head chips that are on my scalp. And it's very hard to describe the sensation to people who are not chipped and not tortured by the intelligence agencies. But basically all the victims have well, it's some. I think people described it in articles like the victim's head is immersed in a tub, for example, and the tub is meant to indicate an entire network of chips. And I suspect that these networks, these chips are also networked, so interconnected with some sort of self-assembling nanotech network that grows in your tissue, because stuff like that has also been measured by a private investigator. So when you're being attacked, there are different ways of attack, but one of them is that I feel it really feels like a strong current is passing across my forehead or across an arc above my head, somewhere near my forehead or just above the hairline. And that must be just either several chips simultaneously being turned on, or they actually communicating, or some sort of current passing. It's really bad. And it's kind of putting a load on your brain, so you can't see, or you can't think, or you can't concentrate. And because your brain is electromagnetically operating, any sort of effect like that can really disturb you. So that's just one half. And then they are, of course, trying to cause pain. They are raping me every day through the chips in my genitals. And also, every time I leave the house, they're actively trying to cause me harm. So I have bodily harm. I suffer every time I leave the house. And when I go and do something productive, they try to actively mutilate me in some very egregious fashion. So yesterday, for example, I went out, and a journalist, so a journalist with a camera team, did an interview with me in German, and we were at a hotel, and that's where they interviewed me. But it was a public setting, and we had to walk to this hotel, and I think on the way I was shot again from some sort of dew that was either hidden in a car or it was hidden in a rucksack. I don't know, but my thigh ended up massively bruised again. But also what was rather unpleasant was that I had something that might be nanodarts shot into the back of my skull. So into the neck muscle, actually. And on Twitter, I released a picture of what my head looks like. And I'm just going to scroll down and actually find it for you and show you, because well, the reason I'm doing this is not because I want to invite pity, but rather because I know that this is being done to many, many victims, and I want you to see my example, and maybe you recognize this and it has happened to you as well. So let me just share my screen and show you my Twitter feed. So I started numbering my tweets because they were being sabotaged. So this is tweet number 769. And if you go to my Twitter stream, which is stop007.org, you will find this tweet. And basically, what you can see on this image, what the image really doesn't show, and that was actually the most the starkest thing, is that after something was shot into my neck, into this muscle here at the back of my neck, it swelled up massively. So actually around this point, there's a huge swelling. And it's very, very, it feels very hot, very raw, and very inflamed. And you can see this entire area, first of all, red. And I should say that in this region, MI5 in 2012 infected me with something. So in this patch, there's already something that could be biowarfare or nanotech or something that's not quite normal. And I'm pretty sure that they did that because they infected the back of my head. So there's a round red patch, I think somewhere here. And then also simultaneously, they infected large areas on both of my legs simultaneously. And this was in 2012. So 5 years on, half a decade on, it hasn't actually healed up. So this isn't normal by any means. But on top of that, on top of me having a patch there anyway, so somehow the back of our neck seems to be important, I think. What happened yesterday is that either in the hotel or as I was outside, darts, some sort of poison darts, were shot into the back of my head. And basically you can see these lesions. So one, there's an entire scatter patch here, another one there, faintly visible there, and so on. And it's extremely unpleasant. And I think there were several things actually fired into here into my skin. So you can see that the color changed around where it was shot in, but you can also see the slight pink. That's actually a massive inflammation here. And I'm not sure if people had something like that, but I can tell you that they did something similar. So when I was traveling by airplane, they did it twice now that they seem to have taken. So on the flight, on one of them, I actually fell asleep. And this could be because they turned on my head chips, and then you just can't help yourself. You just fall asleep within seconds. But when I got off the plane, I realized that on my arm, there was something that looked almost like a biopsy had been taken, because there were a triangular, 3 little circular holes in my skin on my lower arm. And it looked like little bits of skin were missing. So that happened, and it happened actually twice. So once they took 3 skin samples, 2, on another occasion 2. And this really shows you that your body is being used as a biomedical slave, which is what I have been for, I think, over a decade now. And as I'm writing up my testimony bit by bit, I figure out what has been done to me. But I don't know. I'm not sure if people actually experience something similar. So I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat. And okay. So people say there's no chip, it's all done by satellites using your brain signature. This was posted by Andromeda. Well, first of all, this whole sci-fi, Andromeda nickname reminds me of the intelligence agency's brainwash program. But I have to tell you, no, it's not done all by satellites, because we've found the chips already. So, okay. Okay, so people say that the wounds never heal. Sounds like poisoning. Okay. Yes, so this seems to be the general agreement here in the chat. I'm trying to scan things as quickly as possible. And okay, and then actually I've just seen a question saying by Viv Lucky, please expand on why systems thinking is a threat to these people. I shall do that later on when I talk about Aaron Schwartz. Okay, but so much about the actual injuries to my head. But basically what has become clear is that by now, every single time I leave the house, so I do something proactive, that the intelligence agencies want to cause active harm. So it's almost like every single time you do something to protect yourself, because they want to kill you, if you gain any ground, they have to physically damage you so that they can still book it as having won or something like that. And I want everybody to understand that there's no mystery who is doing this. This is our own national secret services. They are entirely in the service of organized crime. And so I actually want to say a bit more about that, because so what I really want to do I guess, I want to go through my Twitter stream because there have been a couple of points, and if you're not following, then you might have missed out a few things. But let me just run through, and I promise you everything that I say has a point to it. So just bear with me. I'm just going to share my screen, and I'm just going to run through and explain to you what the whole point was of my tweeting today. So in the beginning, I was having a chat with this person here. And we were talking about having some sort of hashtags for the entire campaign to shut down this entire Nazi architecture. Now, you would think, why the hell, bother thinking about that? Just use any old hashtag. But there is a point to it. And it's because if you use a hashtag, you can type it into the search, and you can see what everybody has been posting. Well, unless Twitter's shadow banning, of course, but you will have a better guess of who is working on this. So as soon as you use a hashtag, you can just post stuff. You don't actually have to tweet something at a person like it's done here. And if people use the selector in the search, then they will find your messages, So this is why hashtags are actually a jolly good thing. And so far, I did a little survey and we did a brainstorm of what to use. And so far, the winners are Operation Nazi Hunt. There's also hashtag Biomed Mafia or Medical Mafia. And, it's also connected to research in general because IT is also playing into this. But I think overall people understand if you say hashtag medical mafia or biomed mafia, they understand that it's about chips and it's about affecting the body. And then we also had the idea of using a gate, like hashtag Nazi gate or Intel gate or Neurogate. And then the person I was talking to had a brilliant idea and suggested a hashtag of Neuroberg, as in Nuremberg, but now with the entire Nazi neurotech. But anyway, so this discussion is still ongoing. I think you can still vote. And I just wanted to explain why hashtags are actually a very important thing. And they are particularly important because we all have to work hard to find the people who are working in this field because the intelligence agencies continually sabotage us. So if you're following somebody, maybe you notice that behind the scenes, you will be unfollowed. And I noticed that, and people actually told me that, people who had a lot of followers discovered that they were suddenly unfollowed, and my messages were not sent to them anymore. And that's entirely due to sabotage. And this will affect you if you've got a lot of followers, because then, the intelligence agencies think if you retweet anything that I'm telling you, then you will reach a lot of people. So there will be a big amplification factor. So that's why they want to snip those connections. Okay, so you can find a way around that by using a hashtag and then doing the search, because it's a bit roundabout. And then you can make it even harder if you randomly click on somebody who is using that hashtag and then doing a random walk through the people they are following, So what you're doing then in terms of systems analysis is essentially walking through the network, doing a little random walk, almost random walk, a bit like these crawler bots that are used by the search engines. And you can actually map the biggest nodes fairly quickly doing that if you're a bit clever about it. So anyway, I'm just giving you tips in the background. And yes, then the other really big point I wanted to make today, it's about the veterans, okay? This is really super, super important because people have drawn my attention to the fact that there are lots of veterans who kill themselves every day. And I don't actually think that they genuinely want to kill themselves. I think a lot of them are being murdered and it's made to look like suicide. Other people are driven to suicide by non-stop attacks with directed energy weapons. And then there's a third category, which is they are driven to suicide by force using neural weapons. And neural weapons you have to know about because neural weapons can override your will. They can make you extremely depressed artificially by affecting your brain and certain glands in the brain. They can make you aggressive. They can also make you aggressive towards yourself. And a lot of other things. So I really ask you and all of you who are now listening, if you can tweet out, be creative about how to reach veterans and ask them to reach out to the people they know. Literally, I think the best thing we need that we could do is that everybody who's been once in the forces and has retired literally reaches out to their old colleagues, and you try to build a support network with absolutely everybody you used to know, and you account for every single person, and you tell them that directed energy weapons exist. I mean, a lot of people will know about them anyway, because the military is trained in the use of directed energy weapons, but I bet you that most of these people have not been told everything about implants, because they themselves would have been covertly implanted. They have not been told about brain implants, and they will not have been told absolutely everything about neurotech, because I'm pretty sure about that, because if they had been, they would have left the services straight away in disgust. So please, we need the veterans. I mean, there's humanitarian reasons, because every person is valuable, and I want to save absolutely everybody I can. But also these veterans, and maybe that helps actually. Maybe it helps them to know that we really need them. I can't tell you how desperately we need them, because these people are trained. They know how to run a military operation, and we need them because, there's a lot of things that will make sense to them that I don't have to explain, because they have maybe been in a war, or they know they've been trained, for a war. And I'm telling you, we're now dealing with a war situation whereby the enemy is within us, is amongst us, and actually within us through the neurotech. And we need to find a way to defeat them. And we need to communicate. But this is super urgent, guys, okay? Because we're losing 22 people here per day who could be helping us, who must be helping us. And by the way, I'm not just talking about the veterans because they are useful in inverted commas. We urgently need them. In the same breath, I also want to remind absolutely everybody that, for example, in the UK, disabled people are killing themselves because their benefits have been withdrawn. Okay? So I want you all to start reaching out to the veterans, to the homeless, who, by the way, a lot of them are veterans, and also to the disabled and absolutely everybody in society who needs help, because we have to pull through this together, okay? We have to support each other. So that's super important. Then also, yes, we need to recapture our governments. And I also ask you, talking about war, not to be misled. This is not a war of the civilian population against refugees. It's not a war of whites against blacks, or men or women on men, or men on women, really. It's not. What this is, it's a war on organized crime. The biggest organized crime cartel in the world that has now put absolutely every single government around the world into deep capture. And if you don't believe me, you can watch the last episode of Techno Crime Fighters Forum, where I'm trying to explain to you the spread of this organized crime cartel and Satanism by, I think, hang on, I can even show you quickly, by the flags. So all the people who missed the last Techno Crime Fighters Forum, which I think was 38, please go and check it out, because somewhere later on, me giving a very little spiel. Oh yes, here it is. Hang on, this was the City of London. Anyway, somewhere in the Techno Crime Fighters Forum, I'm talking about flags. Maybe it's the previous episode. And if you're following the flags, you will see that, yeah, it must have been the previous one. Anyway, so it's 37. You will see that the vast majority of flags in the world will have a satanic pentagram. Okay, so this is maybe strange to you to discover if you don't know much about organized crime, but I'm telling you that this is, God, I can't find it. Oh, here it is, yes. So it's episode 37, starting at 52 minutes. You will see me give a little talk about the mafia's satanic symbolism worldwide. Okay, and I ask you to check this out, because I'm going through all the flags, and you'll be surprised how many countries are actually, have declared themselves to be satanic. quite openly, quite in our face, and it was there all along. We just never saw it. Okay, so this is something I wanted to say. And then actually there's much, much more. Let me go back to my Twitter. So there is a point to absolutely every tweet, or most of the tweets I'm sending, that is much, much deeper than what's maybe discernible at first. So for example, in tweet 733, I am, you know, it sounds like I'm just being upset because I'm being tortured. And in the end, I'm asking for the death penalty. But part of me is absolutely serious, because the death penalty is still part of, certainly in the US, you still have the death penalty. And most military tribunals, so war crime tribunals, do have the death penalty. And there's it has a very important role, and that's because people who commit war crimes are psychopaths surrounded by psychopaths. And these people literally don't respond to anything but their own death. And they will not stop unless they can see their peers being taken out. Okay? So this is not me being harsh. This is not me being cruel. This is me just being realistic and having studied psychopaths for a very long time. Unless people receive the death penalty and are actually killed off, these psychopaths will not stop. And I think the people who put the death penalty into the legal system in the US understood that very well. All right? And here we're talking not about mistakes. We're talking about the death penalty for people who have been running a Holocaust, and they are directly responsible. And they have denied the victims not just help, they have recruited trolls to jeer at them, you know, gang stalkers to psychologically torture them, and death squads to shoot at them with directed energy weapons. So in every country where there is this Holocaust program being run, we have to ask for the death penalty for the heads of Intel. That's my honest opinion. And also the retired heads of Intel, because they helped to build the system up as well. Okay, so there is a point to this. And another thing I'm telling you is, unless you ask for the death penalty, these people will not get a serious punishment. So what I anticipate is, if we ask for the death penalty, they will maybe get a few years behind bars. If we don't ask for the death penalty, they'll probably, you know, get a kiss on the cheek and a bonus and a big pension payoff, you know. So anyway, that's just to explain it to all those people who, you know, see the word death penalty and freak out and think I've gone completely mad. I have not. Anyway, so then what's also important is to remember all the people who have been murdered. So I keep going on about these three, and I tell you there are many more prodigies who have been murdered. And by the way, I don't just care about the prodigies, but they do have a very important role in the entire system here. And that's because the prodigies can see stuff sometimes within seconds that other people take a lifetime to figure out, or maybe never figure out. So they're basically like dynamite, you know, in systems analysis. I only name these three because that's already, statistically speaking, enough for anybody who actually knows how to use statistics to see that there's something really seriously going wrong. Because in terms of, you know, how unlikely it is to happen what happened here, this is already enough, you know, to get enough sufficient. In particle physics, you would talk about how many sigma of a signal you have, you know. So this, as far as I can tell, you know, is enough sigma to get people out of bed. But I tell you, there are many more prodigies who have been murdered. I do not name them because their families have produced many more clever children, and those are in danger as well. Okay, so I leave it at that. But also, every single one of these, the deaths have to be investigated, and also they are also placeholders for the thousands and thousands of people who have been murdered by other means who might not be prodigies. And I want you to understand that in terms of systems analysis, everybody is extremely valuable, not just the prodigies. Okay, so I'm naming them because I want to make a very specific point, and these three happen to be jolly important. But I also want you to understand that I want you to track absolutely every death, even if it's the homeless person at the end of the street who you didn't really know, but you have a feeling that he might have been murdered. Please do write it down. Please put it in the affidavits, because we need all that information. Okay, because there's a lot of really dark stuff going on, and people are disappearing, and people are being tortured and experimented on. And I tell you, every single one that disappears unaccounted for is a threat to us all, because whatever happened to them will happen to us next. So that's what I meant by that. Okay, and then also I made some announcements that the UK seems to be in the green light. I cannot really go into details how I came to that, but maybe take it on trust based on, I don't know, perhaps the quality of my insight in other areas. I do have the feeling that the UK now is on much clearer ground. And what this means is that whoever's in the UK or is affected by the Masonic Nazi intel networks in the UK, this is your moment to go nuts, to basically lose fear and start hammering all the systems, okay? And you can do that knowing that there are already people basically pulling the controls back, okay? And they will be working in your favor. But enough of you have to basically launch into this now without any fear whatsoever. Okay, so what I mean concretely is you need to start hammering the Attorney General, who I have contacted myself and who has ignored my case. And you need to hammer the courts. You can, by the way, you can write to all the judges and you can inform them about these crimes, and that way they are informed before they go into court, adjudicating them. You also need to inform them about the total corruption at the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. And you need to contact absolutely every single MP. So every single person, in the legislature, in the executive, and in the judiciary, and in the police force needs to be contacted by you. So please start going all out and make it absolutely clear to these people that the game's up. And the only way is towards transparency, integrity, and shutting down the crime cartel. So that's to the people of the UK. Please, all victims, literally rise now. That's the signal to you. Now, and as far as Germany and Switzerland are concerned, they are harder not to crack. And that's because Germany is basically, always has been, pretty Nazi infested and Stasi infested. And the organized crime cartel has been basically running amok in Germany during the Second World War, after the Second World War, and to this day. And to shut down the German Nazi networks will take a lot of work, and will also take the momentum from the successes in the UK. And so everybody in Germany, I think what I advise to you is that you need to network together. You need to basically form little groups, little self-supporting, mutually supporting troops, and then start, beginning to hammer the administration. What I mean by that concretely is that if you're in Germany or in Switzerland, I don't advise that you go to the police on your own, because you'll most likely meet a Nazi squad. However, I do urge you to group in trusted groups and then approach the police, and then watch each other's cases. And should anything happen to any single victim, go nuts in a non-violent way, in an administrative way. But in Germany and Switzerland, I do not advise anybody to just contact these people by themselves. Okay. So I would say in Germany and Switzerland, we need a lot more grouping and ganging together, okay? And we need a lot more trusted little groups. So try to get into groups which are not infiltrated, where you can feel that the people are genuinely helping you to come forward and are not stabbing you in the back. And this is super important, guys, because we are now trying to pull up the plane globally. And I'm really trying to give you the best of my analysis here. Okay, then the other thing is, I genuinely, if you have any sort of military and intel who have their brain still intact and have some shred of integrity left, can you please claw them out of retirement? This is jolly urgent. Please get them to listen to me. I think if, well, I can never tell because I was never in intel and I don't know what these guys are. These guys know, and I don't know what I get wrong because people don't tell me. But with any luck, what I'm saying should ring true to them because I've got evidence that I'm not completely barking up the wrong tree. But if there are any sort of military people, you know, or people who have been in MI5 or, you know, heaven forbid, the BND or any of these intel services who are not complete fucking Nazis, we need them now. Okay, like literally like now. So please claw them out. And then, you know, out of retirement, I mean, or out of their hiding places. Then I also, you know, there are always publications and books published by people, and I ask you to really start going out and grazing. Then the other thing that was really important is I made a public statement that I will never ever commit suicide. Okay, so if I die, it genuinely, you know, would be murder because me just dying spontaneously is just too much of a coincidence, frankly. So you can't treat it as murder. Also, if I come to harm, it will be foul play because people are harming me literally every single day. And also, I'm not a violent person at all. So if I attack anybody, it's because I'm being neurotecked. I'm not. I couldn't harm a fly, and people who know me know that very well. And so I've made this declaration here in tweet number 738, and I think so should you. So I think it's a good idea if you just make a short declaration and you sign it that you're not going to commit suicide and any such things, because then going forward, if you just spread this, you know, maybe you turn it into a PDF and you post it online and spread it among your friends. Should something happen to you, we can prove that it wasn't suicide. And then the intel agencies can stop suiciding people because they still do play that card. And just today and yesterday, again, I heard about people who have supposedly suicided themselves. And to me, it was pretty obvious that they certainly hadn't. They were murdered. So, you know, we need to basically clear this out, this nonsense. Yes, then I ask you, yes, sabotage and so on. Please just, if your account gets shut down, just reopen it. Go to another platform, reopen it on the same platform and just continue, because now we're basically just playing on time, you know. And if you, I always say to people, if you can just get 0.1% of your messages to reach somebody who cares, then you have done, you know, amazing work. So even if they sabotage 99.9% of your communication channels, you still add to the battle if you get just a single message through. So do not be too frustrated by them sabotaging our communication channels, because they cannot operate at 100% efficiency either. So if there are enough of us, their efforts will be totally futile. Okay, so yes, I drew. Yes, I emphasize that the secret services are murdering people in hospitals. That's true. And actually hospitals are a very big deal, a very, very big deal. And they are trying to cover up murders by just, you know, saying, oh, these people had a very terrible disease, even though it's clear that, you know, they go in with the flu and then they die of something else. But we will investigate all that. Then I also tweeted this absolutely horrific image of how you can be brain implanted through your nose by a brain radio. So if somebody could find the source for this, I'm pretty sure this works. But I also want to draw your attention to something else. I think you can also be brain chipped, or chips can be placed in a convenient location by just injecting something through the ceiling of your mouth. And I have discovered it's roughly there. So you can also be injected here into this muscle, this tissue. And I'm pretty sure that people did that with me because they tortured my head yesterday, and the ceiling of my mouth had suddenly a big inflamed lump that was extremely hot. And then as soon as they turned off the torture, it just cooled down and the inflammation disappeared. So that's pretty impossible, and just within a few hours. So I'm pretty sure I've got a chip in the ceiling of my mouth, and I'm pretty sure that many other people will have the same. So yes, I also banged on about the Queen of England and the importance of Brexit and how the EU is actually funneling off, massive amounts of funds. And I think the amount of money that disappears into the EU and then heck knows where is directly mirroring the big black hole in the budget of the US Treasury. Okay, so here in Europe, so the US is pretty big, but if you pool all the countries of Europe, you will get a big black, money sink, probably comparable to the US. So people have to understand that if you want to wind down this black hole of money that probably goes into the black budget, you have to pull out of the EU, and every single country has to do 100% transparent accounting of their treasury. And that's the whole point of Brexit, because the black budget is what drives this Nazi cartel. So if you want to shut down the Nazis, unfortunately, we have to dissolve bits of the EU. That's just how it is. There has to be an administrative separation. And what the EU has shown is that once they suck off power out of the countries, there's no way you can actually influence the EU. And this is why I'm telling you as a systems analyst that Brexit is a good thing. And I tell you as a person who also went to the UK using the freedom of movement and the fact that I was allowed to study at Oxford, even though I did my school in Germany, that was thanks to the EU. And the EU did a lot of wonderful things. But I also think that we can have these things separately, and we don't need to, have this massive bloated administration of the EU. So I think decentralizing again is a very, very good thing. And if you're just focusing on the freedom of movement and stuff like that, you will miss the point entirely. And you'll miss the point that's has been made by Christopher Story, this was, I think, a pen name, and his name was Edward Hull. And he, in a talk that's split over 3 videos, explains why it's so important that Britain pulls out of the EU. He talks about this black budget, even though he doesn't call it that. He talks about the EU corruption, and he talks about the Nazi links of the EU. And he also talks about, I think, the satanic links, either in that talk or in another one. But Christopher Story or Edward Hull has to be listened to, because he was one of these brilliant people. Okay. This is all really important today, so please bear with me. Start looking into modern diseases, please, because I think some of them are actually fake and have been caused by direct energy weapons and nanotech. So please take that seriously. I also think that we should systematically scan all patients for malicious implants and covert implants. So basically do the reverse of what the hospitals have been doing all these years, which is covertly implant people. So if we want to pedal back from that, we need to throw that into reverse. And it's absolutely non-invasive to scan for radio frequency chips, because you can just hold a bug detector to your body and you should find a lot of them. So okay, so we have to tackle the universities at some point. I also remind everybody that Dr. Ronnie Kilde was also, she was also attacked in a Norwegian hospital, and maybe I'm pretty sure they contributed to her murder. Then also there was a Guardian article about surveillance firms spying on campaign groups. Please try to dig out which of the firms those were, because I think they're involved in the gang stalking. Then more injuries and so on. I posted some stuff about brain radios. Okay, brain radios are implants that can then communicate through the mobile phone network with computers and so on. This is serious. You will see this picture of a brain with lots of little dots highlighted over and over, actually, with a lot of cartel companies. And this just I think indicates to me that this must be what a brain looks like when it's loaded with nanotech and maybe chips that pass the blood-brain barrier and maybe self-assemble in the brain. So I almost suspect that this is what our brains look like. Also, please look into something called mesogens, okay? Because I think they're relevant as well. Okay, interesting links about AIs. Please photograph all your injuries and so on and so on. Then I was sent a very important patent here, and this is to do with remote steerable nano implants. Haha, nanorobots smaller than a human hair. Okay, please look up this patent and download it and use it in your court case, because I think we're dealing with this Nazi nonsense. Okay, then this is a link to my colleague Karen Malton-Stewart revealing that Lockheed Martin is running gang stalking in 47 out of the 50 states. You have to listen to this and you have to quote this in your court cases. And I think you should also, make Lockheed Martin one of your respondents. Lots of good links that people send me. So, please have a look through that. And also note the importance of nanophotonics. Look into that. Any conference that's called SPY, Connecting Minds, Advancing Light, I think needs to be investigated. So this is why I posted this. Okay, so what's also important to note later on, there were a couple of really, oh yes, keep in mind that we're also dealing with pedophilia, This is all connected to targeting. And then the other big announcement I had to make was the one about Gerhard Ulrich. So basically, Gerhard Ulrich is a whistleblower in Switzerland, and he is fighting judicial corruption in Switzerland. And he's the gentleman who has a list of, I think, over 1,500 corrupt judges in Switzerland and the European Court of Human Rights. And because of the latter, this is certainly relevant to everybody living in Europe. But also, you have to understand that the developments in Switzerland will mirror the steps you will have to take to recapture your own judiciary in any other country. So if you're in the UK or the US, you still have to follow what this gentleman does, because you will have to do something similar if you want to fight corruption in your country. So I'll be doing an interview with Gerhard Ulrich on Friday, and I will try to get him to do an interview with Ramola in English. He does speak English and a host of other languages. So, he told me, he feels he's a bit rusty, and, therefore he's not, he's a bit shy about being interviewed in English, but I assure you his talent for languages is pretty amazing. So you will understand him all right, and he's got important information. And the other breaking news today was that the Swiss Attorney General, Stefan Coletta, has confiscated Gerhard Ulrich's computer today. And I somewhat suspect that this confiscation was directly related to the fact that Gerhard Ulrich was about to launch into doing podcasts with me and interviews internationally. Because there's absolutely nothing on Gerhard Ulrich's computer that's worth, any attention. In fact, when I spoke to Gerhard Ulrich today on the telephone, when he told me that his computer was confiscated, he was laughing his head off, because he said there's nothing on that computer apart from the operating system. So he's pretty confident the police find out soon enough and bring the computer back. But still, I want you to know that in Switzerland, what coincidence, that an honest man who's never committed any crimes, but who's fighting crime himself, gets his computer confiscated, and all the criminal Freemasons that he's fighting, none of them have their computers confiscated. So please remember the face, remember the name. Something tells me this man will become important later. Okay. Then also there is actually an audio recording from Gerhard Ulrich's last court case, which I attended on the 27th of November, and that court case was a total bombshell. First of all, it's a bombshell because Gerhard Ulrich, the man fighting corruption, has been dragged into court himself and on a charge of libel. And libel was claimed because he dared to make public and distribute leaflets about a well-known case whereby a Swiss farmer was harmed because his Freemasonic neighbor, who is also an explosive expert in the Swiss army, set his barn alight, and the barn was burning, and therefore, set the house of the Freemason alight. But it turns out that the Freemason creamed off 1.8 million Swiss francs from the insurance and built himself a chateau with that. Meanwhile, the farmer was ruined. And he also suffered, permanent physical damage because he had smoke poisoning as he was trying to put out the burning barn. And, the Freemason was fine. And got all this money. And now, because Gerhard Ulrich was campaigning for the farmer who lost pretty much everything, his livelihood and his health, now the Swiss judiciary and this Freemason is attacking Gerhard Ulrich. So I attended his court hearing, and I can tell you it was extraordinary. It was extraordinary because it started off with Gerhard Ulrich asking that the judge sign a transparency statement declaration, and the prosecuting lawyer and even his own lawyer, all three, he asked to sign a transparency declaration, making public if they were or were not a member of a secret society. And he listed, a bunch of secret societies, starting with the Freemasons, going all the way to Opus Dei. And all three of them refused to sign this transparency declaration. And Gerhard Ulrich told me that when he insisted in the break that at least his own lawyer sign this, his own lawyer had tears in his eyes and said, "I'm sorry, I can't sign this." And then after that, Gerhard Ulrich asked to have his lawyer, which was basically a lawyer that was forced onto him by the judiciary, to have his own lawyer removed because there was no relationship of trust anymore. And then the judge refused to remove his lawyer, then refused Gerhard Ulrich his right to make his own case, and then basically refused his right to even talk to the judge. It was absolutely extraordinary. And the last part of the court hearing, where the judge utterly loses it, where she's just screaming, as far as I can make out, is actually linked here. There's an audio recording of that. And you can listen to that. If you speak French or German, you can hear a lot. If you don't speak French nor German, you can still hear the tone of voice of the judge, which is quite something to behold. Okay, then many other links to Masonic, the Masonic Mafia in Scotland Yard and many other places, but we know all that. I'm just reminding people. And then a very big thing I was talking about today, which is also extremely important, and that's net neutrality. And I reminded people of Aaron Schwartz again, who I am pretty sure was murdered. He did not kill himself, not least because he was a math prodigy, and killing yourself under the circumstances he was in would be a stupid thing to do. And the last thing a prodigy will do is something stupid. So I'm pretty sure he didn't kill himself, but that's not the only reason why I'm sure about that. But anyway, suffice to say that he was fighting for net neutrality and many other things. He also wrote something that he called the Internet Manifesto, which I urge people to dig up. And I want you to take extra care that you get a version of the Internet Manifesto that's really genuinely coming from Aaron Schwartz and not something that maybe the intel agencies have modified to suit their own purposes. So when you find his Internet Manifesto, have a hard think about if it makes sense to you or not, all the points. So he is extremely important. Okay, so keep him in mind, and also please do stand up for net neutrality. Write to your to your Congress people, to your parliamentarians, to absolutely everybody you know. Because if we lose net neutrality, we will lose this battle. That's why it's so important. If you use net neutrality, they can truncate our communication channels, and they will win this war. And with they, I mean the intelligence agencies and the organized crime cartel that's steering them. Okay, so I want you to understand the absolute top importance of net neutrality and Aaron Swartz. I can't emphasize that enough. Then I also want to draw your attention to the fact that Bitcoin is not necessarily what it's made out to be. I think the banksters own the Bitcoin patent, and I think today or yesterday, David Icke put out a tweet saying that Bitcoin was developed by the NSA. I'm not surprised to hear that. And the problem with Bitcoin is it is a nice idea, I have to say. Having a digital currency that is validated through encryption is a beautiful idea. In an ideal world, it would be the perfect solution. But in the world we're in now, it's deadly. Okay, and that's because for the following reasons. Number one, our digital architecture does not have even the faintest resemblance of integrity. Absolutely everything we deal with has a backdoor in it, even encryption, even the most beautiful little algorithm you can think about. And that's because they put the best minds into developing these things, and then they use the best minds to blow holes into it. So what we have right now is a sieve in every aspect of digital architectures. And that's not something really to work with. Then the other thing is that there's something called the internet kill switch. So the internet can be taken offline, and if the lifeblood of your economy, of your people, can be just taken offline willfully, then that's bad. Then another reason is that our electricity systems are the most nonlinear and most unstable systems we have. And that's, I feel, also by design. But the truth is that any nation can be brought to its knees by destabilizing the electricity grid. And it will probably shock you and horrify you to find out how easy it is to achieve that. So I don't think it's a good idea to place the lifeblood, because money is like, it's like blood. It just provides oxygen to the organs, to the actual organs doing the work. And, you just can't have blood that can be just switched off, can be made to disappear, or can be poisoned at pretty much the speed of light. Okay, so for these reasons, I am not in favor of Bitcoin in any way. I think Bitcoin might be useful for very small amounts if you want to send money across the world, at minimum transaction costs. Okay, but I really urge you to be very careful. I think also it's going to be used to introduce a really unstable black backdoor containing one world currency. Okay, and I think for this reason, because it plays right into the hands of the New World Order and the crime cartel that stands behind that brand, I think for these reasons, Bitcoin is a very, very bad idea. Now, that for me was already enough to be really wary. I also think that all digital currencies, not just Bitcoin, have a volume and basically an accessibility that makes it perfect for capture by banksters. I remind you that the banksters have the biggest monetary volumes in history, so they can buy up any resource that they want to, and then basically play boom and bust with it, which is their favorite game. And this is supported by the following plot put out by zerohedge.com and an investment company. And here they're drawing your attention to the fact that Bitcoin is basically the biggest asset bubble we have right now. Okay, so you can argue about the calibration of this plot perhaps. But if you just take the multiple of the starting price, to something, I'm not saying these people are wrong, but I'm saying that there's more explanation that is required to check the validity of this plot than has been provided by Zero Hedge. But anyway, that aside, I do think that these people are onto something. And I do think that what's being shown here is pretty close to the truth. And to explain to you what is meant by this plot, it's trying to show boom and bust cycles in different assets, basically. And it lists a couple. So, for example, the Great Depression stocks is shown in pink, and there the Great Depression in this plot looks like a little blip, like there. And as you probably know, the Great Depression was pretty bad. Now, the next one here is the tech bubble in turquoise. Then in purple or violet, you've got the South Sea bubble of the 18th century. And then this green spike here, or the blue rather, is the Mississippi bubble, also in the 18th century. So pretty big bubbles that bankrupted a lot of people. And then this big green spike here is what's called tulip mania. And this was a phenomenon in the 17th century where people convinced themselves that investing in tulips is something extremely precious. And I think they'd even developed a black tulip, which is, or something that resembles a black tulip, which for reasons of nature was, impossible or now impossible to develop. And then people convinced themselves that tulips are so super precious and you can trade in them and so on, that they started investing in tulips. And I've heard a story of somebody becoming a millionaire by offering a chair for people to sit on as they were queuing up to buy shares in tulips, or buy tulips themselves. I can't remember the details of the story. But anyway, so it was a big, massive frenzy. And it was unleashed on the world in the 17th century, where most people were not very savvy. They didn't really know that much about stock markets and booms and busts as we do today. So that's why they were fooled, But nevertheless, people are fooled over and over again. And I would say it's always the same trick. It's banksters who are in the game of creating boom and bust cycles and know every last detail there's to know about investment and asset pricing. And they are fooling large numbers of people who haven't got the foggiest clue about what they're investing in. So that was the tulip mania. And I'm pretty sure that Bitcoin is something similar, for the simple reason that most people have no clue about computer architecture, about encryption, about cybersecurity or vulnerabilities, and for those people to invest in Bitcoin, it means that they are taking a lot of things on trust that they shouldn't be taking on trust. So, I for these reasons, I think that Bitcoin is dangerous. And there was also a tweet saying that GCHQ was looking into Bitcoin. Oops. Oh my goodness, I've just realized that you guys can't really see my screen. Is that right? Is it true that you guys couldn't see my screen all along? Has it just gone black very recently? Okay, I'm not sure what's going on here. So let me just stop sharing my screen. Perhaps I already stopped sharing my screen. Okay, maybe the image comes back. I've just briefly glanced into the chat and all I could see was black. Okay, 3 minutes ago somebody said. Okay, it's probably Google saying, please stop talking, stop revealing all this and just, go to bed. Okay, so it doesn't matter because I was just blithering on and I didn't show you anything important. I think people still got to see that plot about, the spike And that's basically all I was looking at as I was, happily blithering on. Anyway, I think these are important things that you need to know about, and that's because Bitcoin, Bitcoin is, I think, a method of warfare. All right. I think it's, basically trying to trick us all into putting our, our currency, our economies into the hands of the bankers, And I think for these reasons, it's extremely, extremely dangerous to invest in that. So please, please be careful. I always say just stick to the just stick to the things that stick to the people or you feel that you can connect to over the internet, okay, and just try to be as real and as I try to stick to the things that you can check yourself. Basically, this is what I'm saying. Okay, actually, I do want to say two more things before I let you all go, because I do have just two more revelations or three more revelations to make. One old one and two new ones. Now, I will see if I can share my screen one more time. I'm not sure. Maybe the intelligence agencies have taken me offline for good. Let's just see. Okay, can people actually see my screen now? I'm just going to type that into the chat. Can you guys see my screen? No. Okay. All right. No screen. Yes. This is sabotage. I tell you guys, this is sabotage, but doesn't matter. Then I will talk about it tomorrow. You can look at my Twitter stream, and I do have a couple of things to say to that. So I'm just referring to my tweet number 790, where I'm talking about the plan of the Masonic mafia networks run by the Secret Services, the plan to strip the Queen of England and the royal household and all other royal households in Europe. So tweet number 790 hints at, stuff that is actually evidence, but that most people won't recognize as evidence. And then I'm linking Techno Crime Fighters Forum number 18, about where I'm explaining in the third hour, I'm explaining how to interpret the evidence. So if you're interested in the security of the royal households, or you're interested in large-scale asset stripping by the crime cartel, have a look at that. It's really worth your time. And then finally, in tweet number 791, I have drawn attention to German intelligence. And I usually just bang on about American and so Anglo-Saxon intelligence, so the CIA, the NSA, and MI5 and MI6. And before people think that I have got some sort of affinity to German intelligence, I have tweeted out details about their website, which I think is actively cartel signaling, that they're also part of the mafia. And I also retweeted an excellent video made by Martin Bott, about how the German intelligence system that we know now, which is the BND, the Bundesnachrichtendienst, and the Verfassungsschutz, is a direct follow-on of the Gestapo. And in fact, it still is headquartered in Hitler's old Nazi HQ in Pullach near Munich. So please have a look at my tweets. I'll be mentioning those facts, I think, on Techno Crime Fighters Forum on Thursday. And I've also made public my claim that I think my grandparents were both murdered by British and German intelligence together. And I will talk about, I think, on Techno Crime Fighters Forum why I think that, but I'm pretty sure that both my grandparents were murdered, and that stuff is also related to my targeting. Anyway, this is probably enough for now. Given that they have sabotaged my screen, I think I will just, call it a day now. I ask you all to, take care of each other and take care of all the other victims. And also, gosh, I want you all to basically get back to appreciating each other, appreciating all the things that are real, all the things that have nothing to do with technology. We need to help to save each other. We need to save nature. And everybody who has their humanity still intact, please, please, I'm not religious at all, but because of that, I do believe in the beauty of nature, and that there's something absolutely wonderful and very, very special about what we have in this world. You don't need to believe in God to know that. Right now, what you can hear in the background is actually the noise from, now that I'm talking about nature, this is the huffing and puffing and the noise by a big dog that's taking care of me. So it's just woken up and it's just licked my fingers. So I have to go and attend to the hound and feed it something. So I thank you all. This is the perfect cue. Let's all love nature and love each other and basically do our absolute best. Oh, the dog is, wow, you should have seen this. The dog has just opened the door by itself. This is impressive. Okay, I have to go now. So take care, everybody. And, I'll keep you posted what's happening. So bye for now and have a good night.